covering the heavenly world, vying for fate with the heavens, wanting to compete with the heavenly Lord in height, the world of eternal reverence, the master of the purple star, rebellious against fate, devouring the starry world, the Lord of all fires, shattering the starry sky, the world of immortality, the heavenly court of the Great Han Dynasty, slaughtering the saints and conquering the heavens. The world of immortal swords and ancient swords is divided into 3 realms, with unparalleled connectivity between heaven and earth. PS1. For those who are not familiar with Gu Jian II, starting from chapter 3, it is not a big problem. PS2. Except for a world that will be traversed by true spiritual projection in the later stage, all other worlds will be worn. PS3. It won't be too much time traveling through the world, but many worlds will travel back and forth. Install in the early stages, middle stages, and later stages. PS4. There are very few scenes of love and affection, and the water inside is too deep for the author to grasp. PS5. Genius stream, no system, refreshing white text, cautious entry of combat power party. I have completed 2 high-quality novels, The Dark General of the Pirates and The Light of the Wood Leaves, and my character is guaranteed. Keywords of the novel. The heavens start from the flowing moon city without pop-ups, the heavens start from the flowing moon city. Download the complete TXT collection, and the heavens start from the flowing moon city. Read the latest chapters. Chapter 1 Preface. Purple Micro High Priest. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Preface. Purple Micro High Priest Liyue City, this once lonely and desolate city of divine descent, is now filled with the sound of battles and battles. In the hall of birth and death, a group of Central Plains cultivators looked solemnly at the man sitting in a wheelchair in front of them. The pressure just now was so strong that it gave them an illusion that time had stopped flowing. The will of heaven is always high and difficult to ask. The man sitting in the wheelchair had a calm expression and did not care about being surrounded. Instead, he sighed softly, time has passed too long. This world no longer belongs to us. Even those stronger tribes have been extinct. The cycle of prosperity in decline, withering and flourishing, is the way of heaven. We, born on cold nights, will silently perish on cold nights. The crowd looked bewildered and said, "Ah. What are you talking about?" Tong did not explain, but calmly looked towards the center of Liyue City, in the direction where Jumo was located. "I really want to go and see, look at the faint firefly-like glow you painted, On the radial rectangular road, a woman holding a harp stood in front of everyone. "Miss Li Zhu, the others in Liyue City, and you too. Why? Why do you all have to sacrifice your lives for that kind of person?" Hua Yueqiang stood up with unwavering gaze, "That kind of person. Oh, yes, in your eyes, he is indeed a heinous demon, but for the sake of Liyue City, he has almost given up everything. He has been living his whole life to protect his tribe, so at least today, no matter what, I will protect him. I understand the feeling of wanting to protect someone no matter what. But is it really worth it?" Hua Yu took a deep breath and said, "I will never let you go. That is the only thing I have, more precious than my life, more than everything else. That is the only meaning of my life." At the same time, under the rectangular tree, the high priest, dressed in splendid attire and appearing majestic and solemn, was confronting a figure wrapped in black mist. "Did you see that? Your loyal subordinates are dying one by one, and if you stop me, you, the high priest, will become a lonely family." The black mist surged, and such strange and evil words were spoken from a delicate and lovely little girl. "If you act against the sky, will there be no result? On the contrary, it's you who, without noticing for a moment, allowed this miscellaneous person to occupy Xiaoxi's body," Shen Yi said in a deep voice. Xiaoxi chuckled softly, "If you, the high priest, have been staying in the flowing moon city for a long time, I would not have been able to act in front of you. Unfortunately, there are too many constraints on you. Facing Shen Ye's gloomy gaze, Xiaoxi continued, in ancient times, the pillars of Mount Buzhou collapsed, the sky cracked, and the 6 realms were plagued by cholera. Shen Nong built the flowing moon city here based on rectangular wood, guiding the gods to refine the 5 colored stones, and entrusted it to Nu Hua to repair the sky. The task of repairing the sky took a long time, and the human world suffered heavy casualties. However, the gods had no time to worry about it. It was your Lieshan tribe that invited the flowing moon city to help quell the disaster. As heroes who can make up for the heavens, you have been blocked and sealed in this cage by Fuxi, using the excuse of preventing the leakage of 5 colored stones and Zhengmu. Day after day, you endure the erosion of the turbid qi. Don't you have any hatred in your heart? Shen Yi remained silent. As an ancient ethnic group who had lived in this world since Pangu created the world, their spiritual power was 100 times that of the Nu Hua race. They were good at controlling spiritual energy and had a long lifespan. However, correspondingly, they had high environmental requirements and needed to live in a place with rich and clear energy. After Nu Hua repaired the sky, the earth became increasingly turbid, and it was difficult to find a suitable place for them to live, except for the caves occupied by the divine realm and some cultivation sections. Although the Luyue city was high above the sky, it was difficult to escape the erosion of the turbid air, resulting in the decline of the human body, shortened lifespan, and even incurring terminal diseases, limb ulcers, and painful deaths. The reason why he had to cooperate with the other party before was that the demonic energy of the poppy can infect the tribe, making them no longer afraid of turbid energy. Seeing Shen Yi silent, Xiaoxi smiled and said, "You let some members of your tribe betray Luyue city and openly draw boundaries. Speaking of which, I really admire you. Even though you know it's a deadly situation, there are so many people willing to stay with you to die. Unfortunately, how many people can this kind of operation deceive? Even without evidence, there will still be a large number of people using the guise of eliminating demons and defending the way to eliminate future troubles. After all, those people have been contaminated with my demonic energy." Seeing a flicker of red light in Shen Ye's eyes, Xiaoxi flew over and whispered in a seductive voice, "Let's cooperate again. You believe in Shenong, and the demon realm was born because of Emperor Yan. There is no irreconcilable hatred between us, and even I can consider returning." Xiaoxi. Ah! Before he could finish speaking, Shen Ye's right hand pierced through Xiaoxi's chest like a sharp blade, saying, "Li Pai, you have too much nonsense." Li Pai looked at Shen Yi incredulously and said, You even killed your own younger sister. Is it true that your love for her over 100 years is just a facade, all for the sake of calculating me?" The red light in Shen Ye's eyes faded away and he said coldly, "If possible, of course I don't want to harm Xiaoxi. Unfortunately, I have already made up my mind to kill you at all costs. The poppy never dies, and those who are infected with it will eventually become its demon slaves. As for Xiaoxi, without his protection, it would be difficult to survive in this world. Not to mention, how much pain and torment would his identity as the sister of the culprit bring her. Countless villagers from the lower realms exchanged for a glimmer of hope for their own tribe, and such an outcome was something he had already anticipated. Although the facts are cruel, how could this world have too many choices? It's just a fight for fate with heaven." Li Pai snorted inwardly and said, "It's true that Shen Yi is ruthless. I underestimated you. Come on, I'm waiting for you in the underworld." Shen Yi stopped speaking and activated the divine blood in his body, burning the demon core inside Li Pai's body. The demonic aura burned and emitted a ghostly scream. At this moment, the external seal was broken, and a large group of elders and protectors from the Central Plains cultivation world rushed in. The demon clan, or the high-level demon clan, the heart demon. What a powerful spiritual power. Luyue city is indeed colluding with the demon clan, but I don't know who killed this demon clan. Shen Yi swept over these people with a calm expression and said, "Of course it's this seat. Looking at the human world, besides this seat, how many people can kill it? The hearts of everyone were filled with awe, and among the 6 realms, the 2 realms of gods and demons were superior to all living beings. Even the lowest level of lower-level demons require powerful cultivators with successful cultivation to eliminate them. As for the heart demons among the great demons, in their impression, only the great figures in the divine realm can eliminate them. What they didn't know was that Li Papi was perched on the wooden moment, continuously absorbing the divine power of Shen Nong and the 7 emotions of the human world for over 100 years. Its strength was no longer comparable to ordinary demons, almost comparable to ordinary heavenly demons. However, the smooth sailing along the way ultimately gave them courage. Don't be afraid, he will have a big battle with that demon, and his spiritual power will definitely be depleted. Eliminating demons and guarding the way, right now. As he spoke, various flying swords, spirit gourds, flames, and thunder rushed fiercely towards Shen Yi. Regarding this, Shen Yi simply carried his left hand behind him and brushed lightly with his right hand as if swinging over the lake surface. At the next moment, an invisible pressure fell on everyone, as if the sky was pressing down, and no one could stand up straight. How could it be? A senior elder reluctantly raised his head, widened his eyes, and dared not set a channel. The high-level priests of Liyue City ranked by the number of purple micro-battles, at most only 14. We have also seen the other high-level priests, and they are not as strong. Even if you are a purple micro-high priest, you should not have such a big gap. Shen Yi sighed lightly and said, if it were in ancient times, it would have been right to have such thoughts. Unfortunately, my Lieshan tribe was imprisoned in this flowing moon city and suffered from the erosion of turbidity all day long. It is no longer as prosperous as before. Except for this seat and a few others, the other high-ranking priests are just a few in number. Everyone's hearts sank upon hearing this. Although the high-ranking priests who had been surrounded and killed by them before were far less powerful than Shen Yi, they were definitely not weak. However, in Shen Ye's mouth, they were just a few. Is this the strength inherited from ancient clans? Just as everyone was on edge, Shen Yi unexpectedly withdrew his right hand, and the pressure he had suppressed on them suddenly dissipated. Life is a dream of emptiness, and 100 years of time will ultimately be difficult to overcome. Just as everyone was confused and puzzled, only a roar could be heard. Rooted in the void, the towering rectangular wood that towered straight into the sky suddenly collapsed and shattered, causing the entire flowing moon city to tremble violently. Spiritual power riot, void collapse, a scene of apocalypse. With his gaze fixed on the sky, Shen Yi waved his hand in a dejected mood and said, "You guys go." The crowd exclaimed in surprise, "Are you willing to let us go?" As the high priest of the flowing moon city, I believe I will live and die together with this city. Of course, if you want to accompany me to death, I will not refuse. Many people frown slightly, their spiritual power erupts, and the collapse of the void is naturally terrifying. It can be seen that after recognizing the opponent's strength, they find it difficult to believe that this high priest will die as a result. I understand. Someone in the crowd suddenly realized and looked at Shen Yi with complex eyes. He knows his guilt is deep. If he doesn't die, the remaining members of the Lieshan tribe will be difficult to escape punishment. But if he dies, maybe someone will retaliate against those betrayers. In this way, death is the best result in front of us. Is that so? The crowd suddenly brightened up, their eyes either filled with hatred or admiration as they looked ahead. Even if they were in opposition, they had to admire the sacrifices made by the other party. Standing at the top of the human world, possessing the ability to connect with the heavens, yet willing to dwell in darkness. Okay, let's go. The situation is critical, and there is no room for them to think too much. Either wielding flying swords or driving spirit beasts, a group of powerful beings in the world flew towards the distance like refugees. After everyone left, Shen Yi finally spat out a mouthful of blood. As soon as this blood is spit out, it turns into flames, scorching hot and shaking the void, as if even space is about to be burned through by it. After all, it's still too urgent. Shenyi let out a light sigh, as if she had already guessed such a change would happen. The people of Liyue City are often suffering from the erosion of turbid qi, and they are able to avoid limb decay, which is precisely because they have absorbed the divine blood left by the god of agriculture within Jumel. However, the divine blood of Shennong, the great god, was too strong. Although he had endured the fusion of divine blood in his childhood, he ultimately left a Dao injury. He was attacked by the Li Papi possessed by Shaoxi just now, and the injury could no longer be suppressed. The fire of the Dao that was transformed by divine blood burned the Dao inside his body, making him a dying person. Life gradually came to an end, but Shenyi didn't pay attention. Instead, he looked at Jumel, his gaze piercing through time and space, as if he had seen his childhood running away with Xiaoxi, but ultimately being caught by his father and thrown into the rainy night of Jumel. In the end, I have become the person I hate the most. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Liyue City. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Liyue City. As if having had a long, long dream, so far away that even consciousness was lost. In a daze, Shenyi opened his tired eyes and said, "Didn't I die?" In the next moment, a large amount of memories flooded into my mind like a tide. On the side, the familiar voice came over, surprised and excited. That's great. You finally woke up. Am I reborn? Shenyi didn't panic or be ecstatic, just gently kneaded her eyebrows and said, I'm fine. Let me calm down on my own. After a moment, he finished organizing his thoughts and sighed to himself, I see, is this already my third life? His first life was on the Blue Star, and for some reason, during his reincarnation, he retained the memories of his previous life, but those memories were too vast for him, who was still a fetus at the time. Due to the body's self-protection mechanism, the memory was self-sealed. Until this rebirth, memories finally unblocked. Is it because of the drop of divine blood from Shennong, the great god? Shenyi speculated to himself. Based on the memories of the previous 2 lifetimes, he has already inferred that the world he is in is not simply a world view of the ancient sword, but a world that has been upgraded after the fusion of the ancient sword and the immortal sword. According to the memory of the first life, the goddess Nu was able to send people to the past. Therefore, it is likely that the goddess Shennong could also do the same thing. However, the fact that Shennong, the great god, has been missing for many years, remains to be debated. However, he didn't think much either. No matter how much you think about this matter, you can't come up with an answer. It's better to reflect on the current situation. Thinking of this, Shenyi spread out his palm and a mirror made of clear water appeared on the palm of his hand. The person in the mirror looked like him when he was 12 or 13 years old, appearing immature and green, far from the majestic and solemn high priest he remembered. Indeed, after being immersed in the core of Jumel. My mastery of magic seems to have improved a lot. Shenyi was amazed in his heart, and immediately focused on his understanding. He realized that his understanding of the principles of magic had risen more than one level. In his past life, he only spent more than a decade standing at the pinnacle of the human world, relying on the excellent talent brought by divine blood, as well as the strong and righteous heart after the transformation of his state of mind. As for his own spiritual understanding, it can only be considered to be the level of an ordinary genius. But now, his intelligence is not inferior to his physical talent. After a moment of contemplation, Shenyi quickly thought of the answer. Although it was due to the body's self-protection mechanism, the memory of the first life was sealed and still left my soul in dust. After removing the shackles, I finally regained the insight that should have belonged to me. No, it should have gone far beyond it. This is like carrying a heavy load for cultivation. After taking off the load, the body naturally becomes as light as a swallow. His soul is shrouded in dust, locked in dust and labor for a long time. Once he removes the dust, he shines through countless mountains and rivers. At this moment, the nervous and awe-inspiring voice of the guards came from outside the door. Your highest priest. The door pushed open, and a middle-aged man with a dignified demeanor that made people dare not look directly walked in. Hua Yu quickly bowed and said, "Respected Purple Micro." The high priest naturally didn't care about her, but looked at Xin Yi with a scrutinizing gaze, nodded slightly, and said, "You're lucky. Not only did you successfully withstand the test of divine blood, but you also eliminated the disease. I expect you won't have to suffer from the suffering of turbid qi erosion in the rest of your life." Xin Yi looked straight into his eyes and said, "So, do I have to thank you again?" The high priest raised his eyebrows and was somewhat surprised by Xin Ye's attitude, but soon said indifferently, "That's not necessary. If you can't adapt to divine blood, before your body collapses, Father will probably send you to the Hall of Birth and Death to become the second living puppet of the Flowing Moon City." Hua Yu beside her heard her heart tighten, so heavy that she could hardly breathe. Because the first living puppet of Liyue City is herself. There is no memory, no past, and the only meaning given is to protect Xin Yi as his weapon. Now, is even the only meaning of her existence almost taken away? Xin Yi nodded slightly and said, "It's not surprising to hear such words coming from your mouth. In this city of divine descent, almost 1/3 of the people suffer from physical disabilities due to the erosion of turbid qi, and mourn and die in pain. In a sense, transforming the body into a living puppet may not necessarily be a way out. However, it's still too cruel and cold." Seeing Xin Ye's performance, the high priest was indeed somewhat surprised, but before he could speak out, he heard Xin Yi ask, "Where is Xiaoxi?" There was a slight fluctuation in the eyes of the high priest, but it quickly calmed down and he said in a calm tone, "Her luck is not as good as yours. Although she has been cured of the suffering of turbid qi erosion by divine blood, her body can never grow again. Every 3 days, her memory will disappear and she will return to the rainy night before being thrown into the wooden block." Shen Ye's eyelids drooped and he muttered to himself, "Is that so?" The high priest squinted his eyes slightly and said, "I thought you would have hysterical hatred and abuse, or even numbness. Your reaction like this really surprised me. Hate. Is this emotion useful? It's just exposing one's weakness." Shen Yi walked off the bed and walked calmly past him, walking outside. "As for Xiaoxi, I will find a way to cure her." Hua Yu followed behind Shen Yi step by step, while the high priest looked at Shen Ye's back with complex eyes, as if he had known his son for the first time. Until the figure completely disappeared, he laughed at himself and said, "You never have to grow up, is it not a kind of happiness?" Outside, the north wind was howling and piercing, and the cold breeze made Shen Yi feel like he was separated from the world. With his magical power, he had never experienced this cold for a long time. Liyue City is located in the sky of the Northern Kingdom, suffering from cold all year round. In addition to the suffering of turbid air eroding the body, the cold is also their great enemy. Walking in the city, it's difficult to see a few pedestrians. What ancient divine descendants are just a group of elderly, weak, sick, and disabled people. Shen Yi sighed lightly. Their current situation is somewhat like that of the first generation of dinosaurs, although powerful, they have long been eliminated by this world. At this moment, voices mixed with guilt and joy came from afar. I. Looking in the direction of the sound, a little girl about his age excitedly ran towards him. Although her eyebrows and eyes had not yet grown, she could already tell that she was a beautiful embryo. Several attendants followed behind in fear. "Miss, slow down, slow down." Shen Yi frowned slightly and said, "Tsangming, your illness hasn't improved yet. How can you run around everywhere?" Tsangming's pale face showed no trace of blood, but he didn't mention anything about his illness. He just apologized repeatedly, I'm sorry. If it weren't for me, my uncle wouldn't have treated you like that to you and Xiaoxi's sister." Shen Yi shook her head gently and interrupted her next words, "Don't blame yourself, this matter has nothing to do with you. Although Ziwei High Priest holds a high position, he is also the lord of Luiyue City above him. In his past life, Sangming suffered from a terminal illness due to turbid qi. In order to attempt treatment with the power of divine blood, Shen's father suggested sending Shen Yi and his sister Xiaoxi, who were also ill, to the core of Jumel for experimentation. But just as he had no say in front of his father, Sangming, the daughter of the city lord, could not actually make any changes. These younger generations have no right to make their own decisions, let alone the fact that although Sangming was his lord in name in his past life, he has always been running for his ideas, even sacrificing his life. If it weren't for Sangming's heavy blow to the heart demon at the cost of his life, he wouldn't have easily eliminated Li Pao in his past life. How can he be so demanding of his confidant? P.S. Just to briefly explain, the talents mentioned in this chapter mostly refer to qualifications, physique, and roots. Those who are weaker tend to be close to heaven and earth, while those who are stronger tend to be directly close to the Tao. That is to say, even if you don't understand anything, as long as your qualifications are good enough, God will feed you directly. As for intelligence, it can also be divided into innate and acquired. Innate intelligence is a natural talent. For example, some people are naturally sensitive to numbers, while others are naturally skilled at clever operations. The latter is the ability to learn, and even those who are slow in mathematics can at least gain some insight through systematic learning. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The Roots of Difficulties. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Roots of Difficulties. Sangming lightly bit his lips, and the population of Luiyue City was sparse. The daughter of the city lord had a high status and was rarely approached by her peers. Her only friend was Shen Yi. Due to her own reasons, causing Shen Yi to suffer was naturally an extremely painful thing for her. Seeing Sangming still having wild thoughts, Shen Yi shifted the topic and said, "Has Lord Qing found a way to cure your illness from me in Xiaoxi?" Sangming shook his head lightly, pretending to be relaxed and said, "Who knows? Their adults are always mysterious and mysterious." Seeing Shen Ye's solemn expression, it was Sangming's turn to change the topic this time. "Are you going to see Xiaoxi's sister? Let's go together." A delicate, bright room full of fairy tale fantasies. "Sister Jingping, after today, Xiaoxi from the past 3 days will be gone, and will she become the little she who knows nothing again?" The little girl, who was carved with jade and was as delicate and lovely as a porcelain doll, sat on the edge of the bed, kicking her calves and asked. The maid beside her eyes were filled with pity. "Don't daydream, Xiaoxi is Xiaoxi, she won't change." Xiaoxi nodded weakly and said, "I don't know when my brother will wake up." Xiaoxi hasn't forgotten his brother, and he can't forget Xiaoxi either. The door opened and Shen Yi and Sangming walked in side by side. Seeing Xiaoxi again, even with Shen Ye's nature, it was somewhat difficult to control herself. After all, it was he who personally killed Xiaoxi in his past life. "Brother!" Xiaoxi cheered, and as the swallow returned to her nest, she threw herself at Shen Yi and hung it on him, eagerly asking, "Brother, do you still remember Xiaoxi?" Shen Yi suppressed his chaotic thoughts and touched Xiaoxi's head, saying, "Of course, how could my brother not remember Xiaoxi?" He. Xiaoxi jumped off Shen Yi and looked behind him with some fear. Daddy didn't come, did you?" "Don't worry, brother won't let you be captured again in the future." Leaving the room, a piercing cold wind rushed towards me. Xiaoxi, Sangming, Luiyue City. Shen Yi whispered in his heart, as the slight restlessness brought about by his rebirth had dissipated. In a sense, he has almost reached the extreme in his previous life. Even if we try again, we may not necessarily achieve better results. Thinking deeply all the way back to the room, Huayu closed the door and stood quietly by the side. Shen Yi sat on the chair, tapping lightly on the table with his fingertips. Although he has memories of his first life, he does not regret what he did in his previous life. This is like in the first life, if the Chinese encounter a crisis of imminent extinction, they need to sacrifice other ethnic groups in order to exchange for a glimmer of hope, such as a certain Angsa tribe, they will never hesitate. Of course, he is not the kind of person who destroys humanity. If there could be a better solution, he would naturally be willing to do it. Unfortunately, given the current situation, it is difficult to find any other way to break the deadlock. There are currently two difficulties in Liyue City. Firstly, the Flowing Moon City has a barrier set by the Heavenly Emperor. Secondly, the tribe members are unable to adapt to the turbid qi. Just looking at these 2 points, there is actually a way to crack them. Fuxi's barrier can be broken by repairing the Xiaoming divine sword discarded by Fuxi. As for the turbid energy, even without relying on the erosion of demonic energy, one can still place their clan members in places with rich and clear energy such as the 36 Cave Heaven and the 72 Blessed Land by searching for or seizing them. What really makes him feel tricky is the attitude of the one in the sky. Although the Heavenly Emperor set up a barrier outside the Flowing Moon City to prevent the leakage of secrets such as the 5 colored stones and Jumo, isolating the city from the world, no matter what he thought, he felt that the other party was downplaying the influence of Shenong Zunshen. In ancient times, the 3 emperors stood side by side. But now, only the name of the emperor is heard in the world, and the emperors of the earth and the people have long become legends. Even after the defeat of the beast race in ancient times, the divine race was not completely eradicated, but rather retreated to a different time and space, eventually developing into the demon race. As the creator of the beast race, Shen Nong naturally carried some unpleasant reputations. Even the descendants of Nu are known as demons in many realms. In his past life, he may not have fully understood the intention behind Fu Shi's actions, but based on his memories from 2 lifetimes, he has some speculations about this. After the founding of Pangu, the essence and energy god split into the 3rd emperor of the first year of the world, but the legacy is far more than that. If anyone can inherit the orthodoxy of Pangu, perhaps they can receive the remaining strength and heritage. Of course, this is only part of his speculation, and he does not believe that as the Heavenly Emperor, he would pay too much attention to them as little shrimp. However, sometimes the attitude of the upper-ups already determines everything. Even if Fuxi didn't care much about them, he couldn't resist his subordinates pondering his intentions to please him. The reason why he wanted to demonize his tribe in his past life was also due to this consideration, which led to the tribe that worshipped the god of agriculture falling into a demon tribe and stigmatizing it. For the Heavenly One, this kind of negative teaching material may be necessary. With this in mind, Shen Yi shook her head gently, abandoned her distractions, and reconsidered her way out. My current intelligence far exceeds my previous life. Is it possible for me to elevate my strength to the level of breaking through situations with force? He didn't really care much about his cultivation in his past life. After all, the divine blood in Jumo can only last for 100 or 200 years at most and will be exhausted. Unless he can gain the power to resist the divine realm in this short period of time, no matter how high his cultivation is, it will be of no use. It is precisely because of this that he reached the pinnacle of the human world in just over 10 years in his past life, and then turned his head to study Yen Jia, talismans, formations, and alchemy, intending to find a glimmer of vitality through these unconventional paths. But he quickly shook his head and said, "No, it's impossible." He is not belittling himself. It is true that the great power of the 3 emperors at the beginning of the world is too grand and majestic. Although he had never seen the 3 emperors make a move, he had previously wielded the divine sword Xiaoming for a period of time. As the former sword of the Heavenly Emperor, there were still scattered traces of Fuxi's great road rubbings in the divine sword Xiaoming. That vast and boundless power is beyond his reach, even if it is billions of times stronger. Although the past life has achieved the utmost in many aspects, it is only within the rules. If you want to find a new way out, you must open up the pattern. Shen Yi unconsciously twisted his right hand on the table, thinking inwardly, you should focus on the entire 6 realms, and the best thing is that it can cause turmoil in the 6 realms. This way, the divine realm will not put too much energy on me, a small soldier. Just as he was thinking about how to confuse the 6 realms, his eyebrows and destiny palace suddenly trembled. The palace of destiny is the palace of life, where essence, chi, spirit, and will are condensed. Shen Yi naturally dared not neglect it and quickly projected his divine consciousness into the palace of destiny. The palace of destiny is a vast sea of stars, adorned with numerous stars, and the various star domains are faintly connected, outlining a brilliant star map. This is the legacy of the great god Pangu. The star-gathering map. In this world, every soul possesses a unique memory imprint that has been passed down from ancient times. This imprint contains the secrets of ancient spiritual power and life, known as the star enchantment map. It is one of the mainstream ways of practice in the world to absorb the essence of the sun and the moon and awaken the power hidden in the life palace through spiritual power of practice. In a sense, this is also a bloodline cultivation system. As long as one continuously excavates their own strength, everyone can become orthodox in Pangu. And the star map of Shen Yi is one of the 3 walls, the purple micro wall. Originally unlit, the main star of the purple micro wall, which should have been dull and lifeless, now has a pearl emitting a milky white light floating on it. The position of this bead seems very transcendent. Even the once domineering Shen Nong's essence and blood are pushed aside, trembling like a little girl being bullied. Seeing this situation, Shen Ye's mind moved and he said, perhaps it wasn't the power of Shen Nong, the great god, that brought me back to life, but this pearl. With memories from his first life, he naturally had a strong ability to accept similar situations and quickly associated them with him. Also, this bead suddenly became restless. Is it because of my restless thoughts just now? It seems to be to confirm his speculation that the milky white dots that were originally hovering around the pearl, like gauze cloves, suddenly shone brightly and spread out from the palace of destiny, instantly engulfing the 2 people in the room who had no time to dodge. PS1. The first world will be a relatively weak one, and it will be the only low-energy world in this book. After that, all the journeys will be through the advanced world. For the first time, you will definitely need to explore various mechanisms of the golden finger on your own. If you go to the advanced world, it will be difficult to use and there is a suspicion of death. PS2. Traveling with people can be said to be the poison point of most celestial flows, which I also know. Therefore, I specifically emphasize that Huayu is wholeheartedly focused on the protagonist, and can even be said to be his weapon. There will definitely be no disgusting plot. And then, at the end of my chapter, I also wrote that traveling with people is not the protagonist's subjective idea, but a plot forcibly arranged by the sand sculptor, so don't blame the protagonist, it's all the fault of the sand sculptor. Of course, some readers will definitely ask, is it necessary for you to put in so much effort? Good question. 1. For multi-layered and all-round installation. 2. Related to certain mechanisms in the second world, it is indeed necessary. 3. I will also cultivate a mount in the future, which will not transform or match the protagonist's brother, but will be a powerful hitter and equipped with a powerful weapon, and this mount will also carry a cross. In order to avoid feeling uncomfortable with crossing, I will expose this poison point in advance. If you still cannot accept it, you can stop loss in advance to avoid being unhappy. PS3. Some realm comparisons of this book will be placed at the top of the comments section, which you can take a look at. If you really can't accept it, it's better to delete the book in advance. There is no absolute realm equivalent, it's just a vague comparison. If you don't know that some book enthusiasts will definitely argue over combat power, I actually don't want to do this. The main pleasure of Zutianliu is still in the plot, in the various worlds pretending to be forced. Please don't argue over this. If you can't accept it, just switch to a new book. Thank you. Previously, updates were usually made after midnight, but many book enthusiasts reported that it was too late, causing them to stay up late and wait. Therefore, this time we have scheduled the update for noon every day. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Under One Person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Under one person on the bustling streets, amidst the constant flow of people, Shen Yi stood silently as if he had formed two worlds with his surroundings, his face full of excitement. Dragon and Tiger Mountain. Luo Tian de Jiao. After arriving in this unfamiliar world with some familiarity, he went to inquire and concluded that he had indeed traveled through it again. Shen Yi felt a bit relieved in his heart, but fortunately, the world he traveled through this time was under one person, so at least he didn't have to worry about language barriers. After all, his current magical ability is not enough to read memories without harming the soul. After calming down, a lingering heat rose in his heart. He didn't really care much about improving his strength in his past life, because he knew that no matter how hard he worked to cultivate, he could never reach the level of Emperor Fuxi in just over 100 years. But now, this extravagant hope may not be impossible. Even if it's not enough, he can consider other options. Such as world immigration. However, there's one more trouble. Shen Yi frowned slightly, unsure of the time flow of this world. If the flow of time in this world is too slow, wouldn't it be a sea of change when he returns? But the problem is that the bead had not played a role for 100 years before, and he had not figured out the mechanism of its use. He rashly traveled back, and if the bead did not accumulate enough energy to travel the world for the second time, wouldn't he have wasted this incredible opportunity? However, for the activation of this bead, I am not without any ideas. At least let me confirm first. Shen Yi turned around and met Huayu, whose eyes were full of doubts. Although confused about the current situation, she did not inquire. If it was something she could know, I would naturally tell her. After a moment of contemplation, Shen Yi smiled and said, "You can treat all of this as a gift from the god of agriculture." Huayu's eyes lit up and she said happily, "Great. With the grace of the god of agriculture, you no longer have to worry about the high priest forcing you to do things you don't want." Obviously, she was completely indifferent to why the long-lost Shenong deity suddenly showed signs, and only focused on the help this news could bring to Shen Yi. Shen Yi nodded and smiled, "Let me teach you some languages of this world first. Their appearance and temperament are both top-notch among divine descendants, and they stand out among the crowd in this mundane world. In addition, the priestly attire, which can be considered as bizarre attire in this world, has attracted countless curious gazes along the way. Fortunately, there was no one in front of Longhu Mountain who didn't have long eyes, just amazed. Then, the two were stopped. Ticket, 260 per person. Shen Yi, who was speaking the same language as Huayu, was stunned. He really forgot about this. After all, he had no concept of money for over 100 years in his past life. Seeing the two of them not paying, the uncle who collected the ticket sternly scolded, "What are you looking at? You don't need to pay if you're handsome." Shen Yi was dumbfounded and about to use illusion to deceive him when a person next to him pulled out money and said, "I'll pay for this young man." Turning his head, he saw a man speaking who looked a bit lazy and mischievous, along with two men and one woman. Shen Yi, who is familiar with the trajectory of this world, naturally understands that the person speaking is named Su Si, who is the head of the North China region of the official organization Anywhere Tong, that manages foreign people in this world. The other three people are his brother Su San, the temporary worker Feng Bao Bao who knows everything, and the central figure of this Luo Tian festival, Zhang Chulan. Shen Yi didn't show any affectation and nodded, "Thank you." Su Si smiled twice and asked in a low voice, "Little brother, did you come out with your family behind your back to attend the Luo Tian festival? You even forgot to bring your money." On the side, Zhang Chulan was taken aback and said, "Let me go. They are only in junior high school at this age. Is the real world of aliens so wild? Wait, they should be aliens, right?" Su San glanced at him and said, "I don't know." Zhang Chulan puzzled and said, "But it's obvious that fourth brother treats them like strangers, right?" Temperament. Su San said succinctly, "Although it is not yet certain that they are outsiders, it is unlikely that ordinary people have their temperament. Zhang Chulan nodded subconsciously, realizing just now that those two people had a different art style from theirs. It's like walking out of the ancient wilderness, completely different from those cosplay skins. However, even if it's an outsider, fourth brother doesn't need to be so enthusiastic, right? Zhang Chulan thought that fourth brother's lazy temperament could be so enthusiastic, which was really puzzling. Su Sanmo rubbed his chin and said, there are families and sects in the alien world that have been registered in the company. However, with their outstanding temperament and historical costumes, if they were aliens, they should not be without fame. Zhang Chulan suddenly said, fourth brother, you've always been familiar with them, right? The six of them traveled together until Zhang Chulan was about to visit the old master of Longhu Mountain before they parted ways. Shen Yi and his companions went to the back mountain, which was the location for the Luo Tian festival. During a conversation between Zhang Chulan and the heavenly master, Su San walked up to Su Si, who was somewhat absent-minded, and said, how are you? Did you ask anything? Su Si slapped his face and said, I've really seen a ghost. Su San raised his eyebrows and said, what's wrong? Su Si's face was full of confusion and he said, do you dare believe me? When I talked to that young man, it was like being questioned by an old leader. His aura was completely different. Ah-ha. Su San wrote with disbelief on his face, do you have a generous nature to care about things like the emptiness and vastness of the Qi field? I'm serious. Su Si said, lowering his voice and asking, do you think they might come from any hidden family? The hidden family. Su San twitched his lips twice, I'm still in the dragon group. Su Sishen nodded in agreement and said, according to online sources, our company can actually be considered a dragon group. Su San. The test in the back mountain is very simple, with a large canyon separating the two sides and connected by hemp ropes in the middle. For ordinary strangers, it's not too difficult, so Shen Yi and the others naturally passed easily. After passing the test, I truly saw more strangers. However, Shen Yi did not join the fun, but brought Huayu to the forest behind the mountain. As the ancestral home of the Zhengyi sect, Longhu Mountain can be said to be a rare gathering place for spiritual energy in the world, and few people have cut down forests. The trees naturally grow lush and contain spiritual energy. For the mortal world, the quality of spiritual materials here is already quite good. Shen Yi frowned slightly and relaxed. As the top-level Great Yanshi, as long as he was given the appropriate materials, he could definitely create Yanjia that far exceeded his own strength. This is his greatest confidence in this world. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Sword of the Heavenly Emperor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Sword of the Heavenly Emperor. The next day, on the back mountain. Strange people that are rare to see on weekdays can now be seen everywhere. Having a powerful force that is different from ordinary people, but unable to occupy the mainstream of this world, using one's qi still requires concealment. Now, it is rare to have the opportunity to showcase oneself, and naturally, various ghosts, snakes, and gods have emerged together. Amidst the hustle and bustle, the heavenly master of Longhu Mountain stepped onto the high platform and after some polite greetings, directly entered the theme. For those who want to compete, please step forward one by one and draw numbers from the cardboard box. The numbers are composed of heavenly stems and animals, with heavenly stems representing the order in which they enter the competition. Each animal has 4, and those who draw the same animal will enter the competition together. Everyone queued up in an orderly manner to draw numbers, and whispers could be heard from the crowd from time to time. Ding Bai Hu, the 4th game, we still have to wait for a long time. Green turtle, it's time. Why should someone else be a white tiger vermilion bird and turn into a green turtle when they come to me? Shouldn't it be Xuanwu? Xuanwu turtles and snakes are one entity, which can be considered as 2 types of animals. I think it's quite reasonable. Turtle, why add a green color in front? I feel offended. Listening to the discussions of the people around him, Shen Yi remained expressionless and looked at the license plate in his hand, whispering, "Jia Qinglong, the first scene is exactly what I want." Although there were not many star players worth watching among the three opponents against Shen Yi, as the first battle of Luo Tian's ceremony, this round of preliminary selection still attracted many people to stop and watch. In the oval-shaped arena, the four contestants stand in a southeast-northwest direction. The bearded man standing opposite Shen Yi is crazy roast at the moment. "What's going on in Longhu Mountain? Why did you even let such a furry little devil in? Unfortunately, there are still so many people watching here. Even if we win, he will only be accused of bullying children. Forget it, let's defeat the other two first and then send him out." Unfortunately, the other two also share the same idea. After the referee announced the start of the game, the three of them almost coincidentally rushed towards each other, fighting in a melee. Shen Yi, who was completely detached from the field, watched this scene calmly. Although he was looked down upon by others, his heart was completely calm. He just calmly pulled out his long sword from his waist. The Xiaoming wooden sword, which was imitated from scraps of material after crafting Yan Jia yesterday. In his past life, he often used the 5 elements technique, witchcraft, and Yan Jia to confront enemies, and his cultivation in swordsmanship was not particularly high. However, during the time he was in charge of the Xiaoming divine sword before his rebirth, he was able to comprehend some traces of the great way left by the Heavenly Emperor. Although it is rumored that the Heavenly Emperor is not particularly skilled in swordsmanship, his position is still there, and even the simplest sword-swinging movements seem as profound and mysterious as the evolution of the Heavenly Way. Seeing Shen Yi holding a wooden sword, with his eyes closed and a solemn expression, many people on stage chuckled softly. Is this little brother trying to boost his energy? Are you ready to use any big moves? What's the use of the accumulating strength move? Even if he wins this game by chance, will the people behind him still give him a chance? Why be harsh? It's already commendable to maintain this kind of mentality in such a chaotic situation. But soon, they realized something was wrong. I saw Shen Yi holding a sword in his right hand and gently dusting the blade with 2 fingers in his left hand. In the next moment, a purple-black thunderbolt fell from the sky, like a wandering snake, winding around the edge of the sword, reflecting Shen Yi like a deity holding the power of thunder. An inexplicable majesty lingered over the arena, making people feel a palpitations that couldn't catch their breath. Even everyone in the audience noticed, and the 3 people in the audience were all extremely shocked, without saying much. What's the situation? This little ghost doesn't seem to be here to make up for it. No, we can't let him continue to build up momentum like this. The 3 of them exchanged a glance as if they had agreed, then stopped at the same time and rushed toward Shen Yi together. However, their movements were still too slow, and on one side of the field, Shen Yi had already swung his sword and chopped it off. Above the floating clouds, below the earth's record, the majesty of the sky is brilliant, with one sword strike. A thunderbolt exploded in everyone's hearts, flashing with lightning. The dazzling brilliance stimulated them, making them unable to even open their eyes. As the light dissipated, the terrifying scene of the entire stadium being divided in half caught everyone's attention, and countless gasping sounds suddenly arose. Are you joking? This kind of attack actually came from a child's hands. It's really scary, even the Heavenly Master couldn't achieve this at his age. Because he didn't intend to kill anyone, Jianmang didn't run over the other 3 people, but even so, the terrifying aura of thunder shook them all and made them weak, losing even the strength to stand up. Seeing this situation, many people's fear of Shen Yi has escalated. Cutting the field with one sword, although visually impactful, in the eyes of many people, it is not impossible to replicate. What is truly terrifying is the magnificent heavenly power contained in that sword, as if it were annihilating the world. In a corner of the audience, Zhang Chulan widened her eyes and said, "I'm so good. This young man is indeed a hidden big shot." Su Si's rare and serious analysis beside him said, is it because of energy accumulation? However, even if it is because of energy accumulation, it is terrifying enough. Chu Lan, if you encounter him in battle, you must not give him a chance to accumulate energy. Zhang Chulan nodded in disbelief and immediately put on a bitter face. His strongest skill was the thunder technique learned from the Golden Light Mantra, but no matter how he thought about it, he felt that his thunder technique was completely different from the thunder technique of the other party. On the other hand, as a popular contender for the championship at the Luo Tian festival and a descendant of the Zhuge Wuhou family, Zhuge Qin rarely widened his eyes and said, this kind of thunder technique is difficult to achieve even in the Dragon and Tiger Mountain, which is the top inheritor of thunder techniques. As he spoke, he looked at his younger brother who was already dumbfounded and said, it seems that his age is similar to yours. Bai, do you have confidence in what he says? Zhuge Bai came back to his senses from the shock. Upon hearing his elder brother's question, he quickly shook his head like a tambourine and said, how could it be? If I fight him, I will be killed. Amidst the gazes of shock or admiration from the crowd, Shen Yi calmly walked out of the venue with a calm expression, but a slight wave stirred up in her heart. In the Palace of Destiny, the beads that had originally appeared dull due to time travel have now become more moist, surrounded by strands of white mist. Sure enough, the change of fate is the source of energy for this pearl. At least one of its sources. He had this speculation before, why did this bead finally come into play until his death? Now it seems that it is likely due to contact with those sons of fate. In addition, the influence of the first life may also be a trigger. Although the memories of the first life have not been awakened in the previous life, there are still some subtle changes in the so-called world line under the influence of subtle influence. Do I have to constantly plan around those sons of destiny in the future? Shen Yi pondered in his heart, but soon shook his head slightly. Not entirely. The sons of destiny are just the fate of the worlds will for a period of time. If I really want to gain that power, wouldn't it be faster to directly overturn a world? However, the greater the gain, the greater the risk, especially when one is not strong enough. If one is too ambitious, they may not even know how to die. Shen Yi quickly restrained those dangerous thoughts and refocused his gaze on the slightly shining pearl. Since it is based on fate, let's call it the Destiny Pearl. Thank you to Slash for the 1500 reward, Broken Bridge and Snow 282 for the 1000 reward, Satan's Gift 2016 for the 500 reward, and Doomsday Sky L for the 100 reward. The world won't be too long under one person, it will be gone in just a dozen chapters, mainly to introduce a setting after the end of this world. Secondly, the protagonist does not plan for the 8 wonders or elevate them to such an impressive level. After all, the protagonist was a big shot in his past life and had a high vision. Of course, the protagonist will never fail to gain anything in this world, as you can see from reading on. Finally, I heard that the current follow-up reading is very important, and it has been decided whether there will be any recommendations in the future. I sincerely request everyone to continue reading more Epsilon. Even if you are not interested in this world or plan to take care of it first, I still hope that everyone can help you click in and flip through it in the early stage. Gao Sa kneels down and thanks or two. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Summoning the Gods. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Summoning the Gods. Although being watched by the crowd, with Shen Ye's nature, he naturally wouldn't be influenced by the gaze of others and calmly returned to the audience seat from the audience. So strong, truly I. Hua Yu's eyes were full of admiration, and compared to those outsiders, she could see more clearly the extraordinary power of Shen Yigong's sword. Shen Yi nodded slightly and calmly accepted the praise. Yuer, how many scenes are you in? Hua Yu replied, the third game, C. Vermilion Bird. However, the Vermilion Bird team in the first round has not finished playing the field yet. It will be my turn later. Shen Yi smiled and said, speaking of which, I haven't seen Yuer take action yet. Let me see later. Hua Yu nodded and said solemnly, I will do my best. Due to Shen Ye's presence, many people are secretly watching the two of them. At this moment, hearing Hua Yu say this, I can't help but mutter to myself. Can't this little girl also be a humanoid beast? 2 hours later, the first 2 rounds of the competition finally came to an end. The Vermilion Bird Group venue, Hua Yu, and the other 3 people are already in place. With the 3 unlucky people in the first round as a warning from the past, the 3 of them naturally dared not underestimate Hua Yu, who had been following Shen Yi all along. After the referee announced the start of the game, the 3 of them almost simultaneously attacked Hua Yu. Seeing this situation, Zhang Chulan sneaked up to Shen Ye's side and prepared to gather some intelligence. She was very familiar and said, at the beginning, we were besieged. The situation is very bad. Shen Yi turned his head to look at him and said, it's over. It's already settled. Zhang Chulan responded casually, suddenly realizing it. She quickly turned her head and saw that the 3 people he had high hopes for had already fainted on the ground. What's the situation? He just turned his head, how come the game has already ended? He hasn't had a chance to inquire about anything yet. So strong, just plucking the strings, those 3 people fell. Sound wave attack. Another tough opponent. Upon hearing the commotion around her, Zhang Chulan finally understood what had happened before and muttered to herself, sound wave attack. Is wearing earplugs useful? Shen Yi looked down calmly, not surprised that Hua Yu had easily defeated her opponent. As a masterpiece of his high priest father, Hua Yu's strength is even higher than before his awakening. Dealing with a few ordinary people who only know some supernatural powers is naturally not very difficult. However, why does the energy absorbed by the heavenly destiny pearl differ? Shen Yi frowned slightly. Although these 2 battles had little effect on supplementing the heavenly destiny pearl, and the difference was so small that it was difficult to notice, he still noticed it. Now it seems that there should be 2 possibilities. One is that as the owner of the Tianming pearl, I have a higher efficiency in converting energy than the indirect changes of Huayue. Another possibility is that the energy required for this Tianming pearl is not only fate, but also luck. Shen Ye's expression was stern as he pondered in his heart, destiny is destiny, and luck is luck. The former is a fixed number, even if I change the future trajectory of some people, for the future, this change may be their destiny, while the latter is a variable. The changes in communication at different stages of life are different, and any change can become a trigger for changes in luck. Among them, reputation is an important factor in the cohesion of luck. Luck and momentum are often complementary. When a person carries too much attention, every move may affect the direction of the world, and their luck naturally becomes rich and varied, making it difficult to understand. This is how to consolidate the overall trend and improve luck. Although Hua Yu won more cleanly, in terms of the impact he caused, the shock he caused in his previous battle was far greater than this one. I'm not sure which situation it is at the moment, but if it's the latter. Shen Ye's expression became strange. Shouldn't I have to pretend to be a saint in various worlds? In front of people in the future. There were over 100 participants in the Luo Tian festival, but after a 4-person battle on the first day, there were only 32 left by the second day. However, in terms of the level of attention received, today is far higher than yesterday. After the first day of preliminary selection, almost all the players who played the role of a lackey were eliminated. In everyone's eyes, every battle today will be a battle between dragons and tigers. When Shen Yi arrived at the arena, many spectators had already arrived early, seizing the seats with the best view in advance. With his dark horse performance on the first day, he naturally received a lot of attention today. The big crack with a lingering aura of thunder is reminding everyone on the field that this seemingly harmless young man is actually a truly ferocious Tyrannosaurus Rex. Child, are you my opponent today? At the entrance, a middle-aged man with a split hair pushed his middle finger towards the frame of his glasses and looked at Shen Yi with a very coquettish expression. Shen Yi hesitated for a moment and answered with uncertainty, "Maybe it is." The corner of the man's mouth twitched slightly and he said, "I said you, this guy, didn't even inquire about your opponents in advance. You're really arrogant and uncomfortable. Remember, I'm Deng Yofu from the Northeast Shaman lineage. You can also call me by my English name, Smith." "Hee, don't take it amiss," Deng Yukai, who was holding a tight head, smiled on the side. "My old man probably saw me bet on you to win, and he's feeling upset." "Shaman." Shen Yi didn't pay attention to his explanation, but turned his head to look at Smith. "Coincidentally, I'll use witch tactics to compete with you today." "Woo." Deng Yofu originally wanted to argue with his younger brother for a while, but after hearing Shen Ye's words, he instantly calmed down. Does he also invite God to come up with him? During the conversation, the two had already entered the arena. On the stands, the Taoist from Longhu Mountain saw both of them enter the arena and clasped their fists, saying, "The way of heaven is beneficial but not harmful. Wishing both of you a prosperous martial arts career, the competition begins." After yesterday's competition, everyone was saying that you can't have a chance to save your energy. However, I don't really care about it because I happen to need some time. Deng Yofu said as he pinched his hand and shook his head crazily. "You're lucky, the third generation of Deng's children. Please invite Mr. Liu to get on your body." As he spoke, a nearly substantial black mist emerged from under his feet, casting a ghostly shadow of a large snake behind him. At the same time as the opponent invited the gods, Shen Yi did not idle either. Instead, he began his own sacrifice. Although there is no god of agriculture in this world, there is still faith in the Yen Emperor. Let me borrow this power. Wu has the responsibilities of divination, medicine, stargazing, and worship, and as the high priest of Ziwei, he naturally has 1,000,000,000 points in each. The objects of worship are divided into heavenly gods, earthly creatures, and human ancestors. Normally, it is through worship that the god of agriculture is requested to grant power. However, the god of agriculture in the main world has not exhibited miracles for countless years. No matter how devout one's faith is, it will be consumed by time and pain. Over the long years, the worship of Luyue City has gradually developed towards a great rebellion. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Why don't you worship Shenong after seeing him? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Why don't you worship Shenong after seeing him? Under the shade of mist, Deng Yofu exuded a chilling aura all over his body, and his mouth made a snake-like voice. "You useless guy, even dealing with a furry little ghost requires me to do it myself." Upon hearing Deng Yofu's elderly voice that clearly did not belong to him, the audience present also became excited. Even for outsiders, these family immortals and monsters are very secretive and special, and most people are not even aware of their existence. Is this the upper body of the shaman's lineage? It's really amazing. This can no longer be called chi, can it? It's simply a so-called demonic aura. Can withstand the opponent's thunder. Why didn't he use a sword? Judging from this posture, is he also inviting God? Behind Shen Yi, a majestic phantom slowly opened its eyes. If you observe carefully, you can find that the gaze of this majestic figure is completely identical to Shen Ye's. Where did this guy come from? He even knows such obscure witchcraft. However, it's a bit unwise to compete with the long-standing shaman lineage in witchcraft. Although both sides are inviting gods, one side is shrouded in black mist and a gust of Yin wind, while the other side is just a simple humanoid phantom. In terms of layout, it is obvious that the snake immortal is stronger. Not only do these viewers think so, but even Lu Kuansheng, who was possessed by Deng Yofu, did not take the figure across from him seriously. It has been a household immortal for hundreds of years and has never heard of any powerful humanoid elves. Little devil, don't be so mysterious. Look at me. Evil beast, be bold. Before Lu Kuansheng could finish speaking, Shen Yi suddenly looked up, and the phantom behind him emitted a voice from ancient times. Others didn't think anything of it yet, but for Lu Kuansheng, who was facing the shadow of Shen Nong, it was like being struck by lightning. That vast and boundless power is even more terrifying than the thunder it had seen when it was a child, chopping and killing its elders. What kind of existence is this? Lu Kuansheng trembled and shouted, not only possessed by Deng Youfu's soul, but also the body far away in Changbai Mountain trembled as if facing the gods. This is Shennong Zun Shen. Shen Yi had the intention to expand his influence and naturally didn't hesitate to tell the other party the answer. God, the great god of Shennong. Lu Kuansheng was stunned when he heard it. As a cultured snake, he naturally knew how Shennong existed. That's the ancestor, one of the founders of the entire Chinese civilization. Why don't you bow down after seeing Shennong? Yes, the little snake pays respects to the great god. As he spoke, the phantom of a large snake behind Deng Youfu withdrew from him and crawled at Shen Ye's feet, as if obedient as a pet. Seeing this situation, the whole room boiled up. What the hell is going on here? Surprisingly, it's a flash kill opponent again. Ah! Have they finished fighting yet? Is this the battle between the elves? How could such a powerful elf be defeated like this? And still submit? They didn't hear their conversation clearly, so naturally they didn't understand how the big snake lost. After the shadow of the great snake left, Deng Youfu seemed to have been drained of all his strength and collapsed on the ground. Looking at the tall and majestic figure, his eyes were full of shock. After hearing what Shen Yi said, he felt lost in his heart and said, "Can a person like Shen Nong also be invited to be possessed?" Amidst a crowd of shocked and amazed gazes, a greedy gaze stared fixedly at Shen Ye's back. What a powerful and majestic spirit this is. If I swallow it with the method of subduing the spirit, I will definitely become a presence that surpasses the 10 masters. Wang Bian roared wildly in his heart, but according to his inquiry, the opponent's next match will be against Feng Xingtong. The Feng family will also restrain the spirit and send generals, and he does not want anything unexpected to happen. Thinking of this, Wang turned his head and looked at his grandfather with eager eyes. Seeing obedient son's gaze, Wang Ai naturally understood his thoughts at the first time and smiled kindly, "Don't worry, Grandpa will help you." With his grandfather's assurance, Wang Bingkai reluctantly restrained his greed and licked his dry lips, saying, "I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait anymore." Half a day later, the battle between Huaiyue and Feng Shayan is taking place below. As the owner of spatial abilities, Feng Shayan is not an easy opponent to deal with in any way. Even, she was prepared to use Qituan to block her ears. Unfortunately, the sound of Huaiyue's qin strikes directly at the soul, even spatial abilities cannot be isolated. Seeing that the battle below had already shown a one-sided trend, Shen Yi no longer paid attention, but once again analyzed the impact of several battles on the Tianming Pearl. Previously, after he overwhelmingly defeated the opponent, the milky white energy of the Tianming Pearl instantly increased significantly. After this one-time harvest, the milky white energy increased at an extremely slow speed. After he said that the void shadow was the god of Shennong, the magnitude of the increase experienced a small fluctuation. It can be seen that for the disturbance of the world line, the energy harvested is relatively large, but at the same time, it is also one-time. Although the benefits brought by reputation dissemination are relatively small, they are small and long-lasting, and can be repeated and effective multiple times. This is tempting me to keep causing trouble. No wonder I was thinking about how to muddle up the water in the 6 realms before crossing the river, so that I could fish in the muddy waters. This pearl suddenly became active, really restless. Shen Ye's mouth curved slightly as she thought of this. Fortunately, I wasn't a person who kept my composure. At this point, the battle below also yielded results. Surprisingly, even the descendants of the top 10 have lost. What exactly are those two people from? Although she didn't kill her opponent in a flash like Xinyi did, she didn't move a step from beginning to end, clearly adept. After watching the battle, Xinyi was about to get up and leave when a sweet girl with pink hair on her head approached her and said, "Please, please wait a moment." Xinyi frowned slightly and said, "What's up?" Even though she is younger than me, why are her eyes so scary? Is this the legendary way of not being angry and self-righteous? The girl was startled by Xinye's gaze and quickly explained, "Like you, I am a contestant for this Luo Tian festival. My name is Lu Linglong, and I stopped you because I wanted to invite you to tonight's bonfire party." After speaking, she added, "We strangers rarely get together in our daily lives, so it's a good opportunity to get to know each other through this Luo Tian festival." Calculate. Xinyi instinctively wanted to refuse, but when she thought about the conclusion she had just reached, she hesitated again. This is a good opportunity to spread influence, and it happens to take out the name of Luyue City. Whether they will think about finding the lost Luyue City in the future has nothing to do with me. Thinking of this, Xinyi nodded and said, "I know now. Hua Yu and I will be there then. Thank you to the pitiful glass heart book friend for giving a reward of 5,000. I was in Fujian, and I was a bit flustered last night." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Death on the Spot. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Death on the Spot. At night, the bonfire crackled and clattered. "Are you a good kid, but you're still a bit inferior to me, ha ha ha. Humph, it's just that I've been practicing for a few more years than myself. What's so proud of? If you have the ability, use a man's way to determine the winner." A man's way. "Elbow, come with me to the nearby grove." "Wait, what are you doing with your belt?" "I'm talking about Pinjiu. I haven't felt this kind of atmosphere for a long time." Walking through the forest, Xinyi sighed lightly in his heart, then turned to look at Hua Yu's small face, which was flushed by the firelight, and asked, "How do you feel?" Hua Yu remained silent for a moment and sighed. "The smiles on their faces are something I have never seen before in Luyue City. I really hope everyone in Luyue City can do the same." Xinyi looked up at the bright moon in the night sky and said, "There will be such a day." Luyue City. Su Si poked his head out from the side and asked curiously, "That's where you guys, Xinyi, came from?" Zhang Chulan, who was a little drunk, leaned over, put his arm around Xinye's shoulder, and sent Baijiu to his mouth. Hey, do you want to have a drink?" Su San pressed his forehead with a headache and said, "You idiot, minors cannot drink." Immediately, he looked at Xinyi again and said, "Sorry, this kid drank too much." "It's okay," Xinyi shook her head slightly and said softly, "but I really don't like drinking. I'm slow and careless, and I'll only put myself in danger without realizing it." A strange color flashed in Su San's eyes. It's not a big deal if he doesn't like drinking, but the following paragraph is very concerning, giving people a feeling of jungle rules. Is there still such a place in modern society? Can't it be from Shenangjia? Su Si interjected and asked, "Just now I wanted to ask, Xinyi, which mountainous area is your hometown in? It sounds like you're going through a very difficult time." Su Sen followed suit and said, "If the environment is harsh, we can find a way to migrate it out." "That's not necessary," Xinyi shook his head. "I have been living in the Luyue city of the Lieshan tribe for generations, and the external turbid air is too heavy for us." Lieshan tribe. Suddenly, Gu Jian's curious voice came from the side. Warlocks have always been curious, and he himself is particularly fond of gossip. He has long been eavesdropping on the side. "Do you know?" Su Si tilted his head and asked. "Sorry, I overheard your conversation unintentionally. Gu Jian took the opportunity to apologize and walked over openly, expressing his speculation. The Shennong clan, also known as the Yan Emperor or the Lieshan clan, is this Lieshan tribe where the Shennong clan is located. Shennong. There was another exclamation of surprise next to them, and everyone turned their heads to see that it was the Deng Yofu brothers from the northeast shaman lineage. Su San's mouth twitched. What's wrong with these young people? Why do they all like to eavesdrop? Deng Yukai had already learned the whole story of the battle during the day from his elder brother, and looked at Shen Yi with an excited and worshipful gaze. He repeatedly asked questions like a machine gun, "Boss, what kind of experience is it to have Shennong, the god of agriculture, come to life? Can you communicate with Shennong, the god of agriculture?" Upon hearing Deng Yotsai's words, everyone was shocked. The imaginary shadow during the day was actually the legendary Shennong. If that's the case, it makes sense that the big snake will be so intimidated by its momentum that it won't dare to take action. Shen Yi didn't care and candidly said, the Lieshan tribe has been worshipping the Shennong deity since ancient times. However, the Shennong deity has not exhibited any miracles for hundreds of thousands of years since its restoration. Hundreds of thousands of years. How many people have a broken face? Do you think you are from Zucudian, Beijing? Zhuge Qing analyzed seriously and said, "Nu wa mending the sky. Does it mean the ancient Great Flood? You hid in a secret realm similar to the peach blossom spring during the Great Flood, so your evaluation of the time scale is quite different from the outside world." After listening to Zhuge Qing's brain teaser, several people suddenly realized that this was reasonable. Shen Yi didn't defend himself, just looked at Zhuge Qing in surprise. This squinting eye is really a talent. Just as a few people were surprised by this information, Zhang Chulin's wild laughter suddenly came from beside the campfire. "Ahahaha, do you really want to see it? Then let's broaden your horizons. Come on, let's see it. Get off. Get off. Get off." Seeing the crowd of people flocking to Zhang Chulan like pilgrims throughout the party, Shen Yi shook his head slightly, knowing what would happen next. He was not interested in bird watching under the moon, and turned to Huayu, saying, "Yue, please go back to your room to rest first. I have something else to deal with." Huayu naturally wouldn't go against Shen Ye's wishes, nor did she inquire. She nodded slightly and said, "Yes." After Huayu left, Shen Yi finally opened the note in his hand and saw it written. "If you don't want that little girl to die, come to the center of the back mountain. Did you catch the fish so quickly? The harvest season is always enjoyable." Shen Yi raised the corner of her mouth slightly, and a flash of fire flashed in her palm, devouring the paper and walking calmly towards the depths of the forest. Half an hour later, Shen Yi arrived at the location mentioned on the paper. The tree shadows were mottled, and from time to time, the hoarse crowing of crows could be heard around. A slightly short figure walked out of the darkness and said, "Child, are you still out for a walk so late? Are you lost?" Shen Yi chuckled softly and said, "The old man is really cautious. Are you worried that I might call a helper?" "Huh, got used to it, got used to it. Although I'm old and frail, I can still sense if there's any ambush around me." The old man squinted his eyes, "But it's you, little kid. You're not young, and you have a lot of courage. First of all, let me introduce myself. I, Wang Ai, am honored as one of the top 10. I came tonight to ask you, my little friend, to pity my grandfather's hard work for his grandson." Shen Ye's gaze was calm as water. Keep talking." Wang Ai stared into Shen Ye's eyes, confirming that he wasn't pretending to be calm. He couldn't help but shake his head and exclaim, "If my grandson had your personality, I wouldn't have to worry about his future. However, it's precisely because he's not yet mature enough that I want to borrow his spirit from you, little friend." Indeed, it was the mice that were attracted by the battle during the day. Shen Yi sighed and then said in a low voice, "What if I say no?" Upon hearing this, Wang Ai's kind face suddenly turned fierce. "You can't help it. Before he could finish speaking, Shen Yi instantly drew his wooden sword from his waist and struck it with a thunderous sword. Raid. Oh, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Wang Ai chuckled. He wouldn't underestimate the enemy just because the other person was a child. His withered body was incredibly agile, easily avoiding the long sword. He grabbed his paw with his right hand, and the last one hit Shen Yi's left shoulder, feeling that the other person's shoulder was as hard as refined iron. Is it hard qigong? Wang Ai was slightly surprised in his heart, but did not hesitate too much. Instead, he mobilized his whole body's qi and grabbed it with one claw. However, the scene of blood splattering in his imagination did not appear. What appeared before him was a void, through which one could even see the precise operation of various mechanisms inside the opponent's body. This is. At the moment when Wang Ai was shocked and lost his composure, a fierce palm strike struck his back. The qi inside Wang Ai's body instantly became chaotic, and before he could regulate it, it was locked by a seal. How could it be? There's clearly no one around. Wang Ai turned his head in shock and saw another Shen Yi standing behind him. The material is indeed quite average. Shen Yi frowned slightly, not very satisfied with the result. Is this a puppet? Wang Ai scanned back and forth between the two Shen Yi and finally understood. You and this puppet have the same breath, confusing my perception. To be precise, it's Yanjia. Shen Yi walked up to him and said with a playful look in his eyes, if a top 10 guy dies, there must be a significant vibration in this world, right? This little ghost really wants to kill me. Wang Ai felt a chill in his heart. Although his experience tonight was somewhat unexpected, he had walked all the way from a chaotic world to the present. His century-long cultivation of character was not in vain. Even when he heard Shen Yi say he wanted to kill him, he quickly calmed down. It's true that heroes emerge from youth. I admit defeat this time. However, young man, you may have some misunderstandings about the 10 masters. Apart from a few Mang masters, the 10 masters represent more of the strongest forces in the alien world. If you kill me. Too much nonsense. Accompanied by Shen Yi's indifferent words, Yan Jia, who was originally standing quietly on the side, suddenly took 2 steps forward and a sword pierced through the opponent's chest. You. Wang Ai's eyes widened, unable to believe that he would die in such a way. This bastard wouldn't even listen to him finish speaking. Shen Yi lightly tapped his index finger, and a stream of water surrounded Yan Jia, washing away the bloodstains. Although I don't care about the revenge of the 10 masters, in order for the Luo Tian festival to continue normally, let's wait until I get the first place before exposing it. Thinking of this, Shen Yi casually set up a hidden formation to temporarily hide Wang Ai's body, and then began repairing the damaged area of Yan armor. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Capturing Spirits and Sending Generals vs Expelling Gods and Demons. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Capturing Spirits and Sending Generals vs Expelling Gods and Demons. On the first day of Wang Ai's disappearance, no one cared. Even if it's not the huge power represented by the Wang family, just Wang Ai himself, there aren't many people in the alien world who dare to provoke him. Disappearance for a day naturally won't trigger too many associations. In the audience, everyone was passionately discussing yesterday's battle and the upcoming showdown today. President Feng, is that your son below? The kind-hearted old master with a graceful demeanor asked the person beside him. Huh, it's the dog that made old master laugh, Feng Zhenghao laughed. The old master twisted his long beard and said, Mr. Feng is too humble. It's not easy to make it all the way to the top 16 of the conference. It also depends on who you compare with. Feng Zhenghao smiled and shook his head. The other person's age is even younger than him, but their strength is no longer on the same level. Dad, don't look down on me too much. Although his strength is a bit weaker than other players, if his opponent is Shen Yi. The result is hard to say, whispered Feng Xian beside her. Although this was meant for Feng Zhenghao to hear, her gaze was fixed on Hua Yu not far away, clearly holding on to yesterday's failure. However, Hua Yu completely ignored her words and only focused on watching the game. "Hey, I said you," said Feng Xian with a hint of unease on her face. At this moment, a shy voice from Feng Xingtong came from the field. "Our Feng family has a unique skill called detention of spirits, which can restrain all spirits in the world. If you don't want to lose inexplicably, it's better not to use the ability used yesterday." Upon hearing her brother's words, Feng Xian in the audience was struck by lightning and looked on the brink of collapse. This idiot, how could he have let his bottom out as soon as he came up? Before she could finish speaking, Shen Ye's voice came from below. "It's okay, I'm also a bit curious about the ability to restrain spirits. Why don't you show me how you plan to restrain yourself?" Hey. Feng Xian was dumbfounded. Are both of them idiots? Feng Zhenghao pushed his glasses on the bridge of his nose and said, "Xian, this time you underestimated Xingtong. He has been observing that young man for a long time and knows that with the other person's arrogance, making this choice is an inevitable result." "Is that so?" Feng Xian suddenly realized and looked at Hua Yu with a hint of pride. "Although your friend's strength is good, his brain doesn't seem to be very good. My younger brother is so clumsy that he can't even tell." Hua Yu, who was originally focused on watching the competition, suddenly turned her head. The cold light in her eyes made Feng Xian feel inexplicably confused and said, "Did I say something wrong?" Hua Yu closed her eyes, calmed her emotions, and then spoke up, "When you use ordinary thinking to speculate about the realm of God, it's already a joke." "God?" Feng Xian's mouth twitched a few times. "It was my mistake to argue with you, a brainless fan." On the field, as Shen Ye's figure gradually appeared behind him, Feng Xingtong put away his innocent smile and said apologetically, "I'm sorry. Although the methods were a bit despicable, in order to reach the end of this Luo Tian festival, I must gain even stronger strength. Please lend me your spirit for a few days, and I will definitely give it back to you after the conference is over. Su Ling, send me over." Accompanied by the loud shout of Feng Xingtong, everyone in the audience looked eagerly into the audience. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. There is no change in the situation on the field. A cold wind blew by, and the sound of crows came from the sky, making the atmosphere seem somewhat awkward. What happened? Has it already ended? Is this a skilled move? It's so impressive, I can't even see any trace. Feng Xingtong's face changed slightly and he realized something was wrong. Come here. In the chilly gaze of Feng Xingtong, Shen Yedan fixedly commented, "Is this the general sent by the spirit? It's a bit interesting." Seeing that Shen Yi could still speak as if nothing had happened, Feng Xingtong's face changed dramatically and he turned on the output power of his internal energy to the maximum. Come here quickly." Centered around him, an invisible aura swayed in all directions like ripples, even the crowd in the audience felt a faint sense of soul being pulled. What power is this? My head is so swollen and painful, what's going on? The surroundings were filled with sounds of terror, but the deep night in the center of the aura was like a gentle breeze brushing against the face, with no change in expression. Surprisingly, it can cause a slight shake in my control. Although it's only a slight change, it's already very rare. It's truly the ability to contain the law. A strange color flashed in Shen Ye's eyes. He saw the ability to contain the law in this mortal world. No wonder in the original trajectory, yesterday's big snake was forcibly subdued by the spiritual dispatch general. Unfortunately, it's not very useful to me. Shen Yi shook his head slightly. Although spells containing rules are rare in this world, they are not very precious to him. However, if all 8 extraordinary skills in this world are spells containing rules, then their origins are worth exploring. If he remembers correctly, the 8 people who claim to have created the 8 wonderful skills should not have the greatest talent. Even Zhang Jiwei, the heavenly masters of Longhu Mountain, and the ancestors of feathering in history have not created such extraordinary skills. How can they create this kind of magic that should not belong to this world? While Shen Yi was emitting associations, Feng Xingtong's face turned pale and he couldn't believe it. He looked at the rock like virtual shadow, and the restraining spirit dispatch that was detrimental to the soul had failed. Seeing the opponent stop attacking, Shen Yi lifted his head and said, "Have you finished attacking? Then it's my turn next. Watch it carefully, this is called. Seize the spirit and send the general." In the incredulous gaze of Feng Xingtong, Shen Ye's right hand waved and the soul of his host flew uncontrollably over. Feng Xingtong looked at this scene in confusion and murmured to himself, "Well, is this a binding spirit sending a general? It's impossible, how could it be like this?" "Of course, this is not a matter of binding spirits to send generals," Shen Yi whispered in his heart. "This is actually a sorcery developed by successive high priests after Luyue City went astray. We have been helping Shenong Zunshan protect Jumel for so many years, and borrowing a little bit of incense power is not excessive, is it? Since Shenong has not responded, we will assume that you have agreed. This witchcraft was not too excessive at first, it was just a sneaky embezzlement of public funds, but after Shen Ye's development, it directly developed into a great supernatural ability to drive away gods and ghosts. In a sense, this divine power is actually similar to the usage of the spirit-binding envoy, but its effect is much more domineering than that of the spirit-binding envoy. Not to mention the supernatural soul, even the gods and earth have to be restrained by it, and even the unowned faith and incense can be deprived. Of course, in the world filled with gods and Buddhas in his past life, he only dared to occasionally borrow the power of the god of agriculture. If he really abused it, he would have been killed by the divine realm long ago. Thank you for giving me a 500 reward from my book friend. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. The First Technician of Luotian Festival. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. The first technician of Luotian Festival. After regaining his senses, Feng Xingtong rushed forward like crazy and said, "Give it back to me, give them back to me quickly." Shen Yi easily dodged his attack and said, "Don't worry, I have no interest in these weak spirits." "However, did you forget to do something before that?" Feng Xingtong woke up from a dream and hurriedly looked at the referee. "I gave up." After the referee read out the results, Shen Yi returned those souls. At this moment, Feng Zhenghao suddenly jumped off the audience and stopped in front of Shen Yi. The melon-eating crowd, who had already stood up and were preparing to leave, immediately sat down with an excited expression, as if there was a good show to watch. Feng Zhenghao apologized and said, "I'm sorry, little brother. It's related to the Feng family's unique skills, and I have to ask you, where did you learn your Lingshu general?" Shen Yi smiled and looked not far away, carefully comforting the spiritual Feng Xingtong. "He taught me," he said, "Xingtong." Feng Zhenghao's pupils suddenly contracted and he asked incredulously, "Are you saying that you only learned after using Xingtong a few times?" Sensing that the energy absorbed by the heavenly destiny pearl was constantly rising, Shen Yi only felt a sense of joy in his heart and mind, without any sense of intimidating guilt. "That's it." Upon hearing his words, there was a commotion around. Many of them may not even know what the spirit of confinement is, but they have personally experienced the terrifying pull on their souls. Moreover, as one of the top 10 masters and the legendary master of Changfeng Zhenghao in the world, the power of this technique is unquestionable. However, it is such a powerful technique that people can learn after just a few glances. It is like a dream. Are you deceiving people? This kind of thing is beyond the realm of genius. It's too foul. How can someone fight him? Demon. Abnormal. Such talents may not even be comparable to those legendary ancestors who have ascended in feathering, right? Amidst the awe-inspiring gazes of the crowd, Wang Bing's eyes showed a sudden realization. I said where Grandpa went. It turns out he went to subdue this kid and even sent a general to teach him the spirit of confinement. However, upon hearing the admiring and praising voices around him, he let out a cold snort with some displeasure. This bastard is quite capable of pretending, but it's also good. When I defeat him, these praises will belong to me. I didn't expect there to be such a talented person in the world. It's because I have limited knowledge. Feng Zhenghao chuckled bitterly and then looked sincerely at Xin Yi. Although it's a bit presumptuous, the skill of Lingpai generals is still a unique skill of our Feng family. Young brother, you are talented and intelligent. I have nothing to say if you can learn it, but please don't pass on this skill to the public. Chairman Feng spoke seriously. Xin Yi nodded slightly. I was just itching for a moment and couldn't help but show off a bit. Naturally, there was no reason to spread this technique externally. He really doesn't care at all, Feng Zhenghao said as he carefully looked into Xin Yi's eyes. He admitted that he had read countless people throughout his life, and could still roughly tell if anyone else had lied. That's right, this kind of spell that can be learned by just looking at it once may not be considered much for such a genius. While breathed a sigh of relief, Feng Zhenghao felt a bitter bitterness in his heart. He regarded his family's unique knowledge as a treasure, but in the eyes of others, it was like a humble shoe, which was really uncomfortable. In the audience, Windsor Yen was still in a state of brain failure. ABA. Seeing her mature appearance, Hua Yu couldn't help but boast like a child, saying, now, you should know the difference between gods and mortals. Feng Xian looked skeptical about life and said, is it actually me who is not normal? The next day. Although it has been a day, the heat of the battle between Xin Yi and Feng Xingtong remains high, completely covering up the hype of the other 7 competitions. Even many good people have given Xin Yi nicknames such as Copy Stranger and First Technician of Luo Tian Festival. In a heated discussion among the onlookers, 3 ordinary-looking passers-by sat in the corner of the audience. Is the young man below Xin Yi, who is rumored to have learned how to restrain spirit and send generals at a glance. The difficulty of the 8 Wonders technique is not small, it can only be learned by seeing the opponent use it once. This talent is truly enviable. What, do you want him to lend you a high-interest loan? No, you misunderstood. I just think it's a pity that this kind of genius doesn't join the whole world. Hee. Others may not necessarily be interested in us mice in the sewer. At this time, Xia He needs to step forward. Speaking of which, where did she go today? Isn't this young handsome guy the most suitable for her taste? Who knows, maybe I saw a young handsome guy somewhere and couldn't walk anymore. Meanwhile, the back mountain. Xia He, who was being talked about by the 4 mad men, was facing a man in white with a crazy expression on his face and said, Hee, Lingyu, your chest muscles have developed again. Zhang Lingyu, with a face full of resistance, pushed her out and said, stand away from me, don't force me to report you. You are such a ruthless man. Xia He pretended to be sad, I still want to help you clear some obstacles. Zhang Lingyu was first embarrassed and angry by the previous sentence, but when she heard it, she straightened her face and said, what do you mean? Xia He jumped off him and said, your opponent in the next match is just a small character, there's nothing to say. But if you go further down, you'll have to deal with Xin Yi, who shone brightly at the Luo Tian festival. Obviously, Xin Yi's opponent today was directly ignored by her. However, Zhang Lingyu did not object, and he also did not believe that Wang could cause any trouble for Xin Yi. He is indeed a strong opponent. Yeah. Xia He nodded slightly, as long as you get rid of him, you'll have half of your position as the Heavenly Master. Don't act recklessly. Zhang Lingyu frowned, not to mention that I don't want this winning method at all, even you will definitely not be his opponent. Even the teacher said that he is the most hidden person in this conference. Even the Heavenly Master thinks so highly of him. Xia He restrained his cynicism, but soon reverted to his old ways and joked, our 4 mad ones never rely on their strength to kill. Don't forget, my nickname is Scraping Bone Knife. Zhang Lingyu frowned and said, if you have observed carefully, you should know that his temperament is by no means comparable to that of ordinary people. Oh, aren't you jealous? Xia he squinted his eyes and looked at him with a smile on his face. You didn't want me to seduce him, did you? Seeing Zhang Lingyu's face turn black, Xia he quickly raised his hand and surrendered. Okay, I'll just listen to you. After finishing speaking, she added to her heart, when the time comes, I'll persuade the three of them to take action. End of this chapter.